Oh. All right, so there we go. We are now live on YouTube. It looks like there was an issue with the YouTube stream, but we are on now. I will go ahead and just repeat what I had stated earlier. I will give it a little bit for people to join in, but welcome everybody, and welcome to all those entering from my other socials. So right now I'm actually streaming on LinkedIn, just because I wanted to give this speech to as many platforms as possible. And yeah, we'll give it a little bit for people to join in. Don't worry about keeping up with the slide deck. All of this will be made available afterwards. It's just my own personal take on how I want information summarized. I think some people, like myself at least, really would love to see all this information condensed into something you can browse easily at your own pace. It's a lot to keep up with all the different streams, especially since they're usually hours and hours and hours. So again, this slide deck will be made available for everybody for free. I'll post it in the Discord for the Good Girls and Guys Discord. I'll post it on my LinkedIn, and you'll see a link to both of those places so that you can download the attachment for yourself. It'll just make life a lot easier, I think, for people who might not really care for the video, but just want to see the information. I know I'm at least one of those people. It's why I try my best to capture all that information in the description field. But some other people might be more interested in getting the video. So here you are. Feel free to listen on as you go. And we'll give it just another minute to see if anybody else comes in. If not, we'll get right into it. And worst case, you know, they just catch up on the replay crew. And yeah, we'll go from there. Alright, I see a couple people in already. Alright, great. Alright, well, with that, we'll just go ahead and move on forward. So don't worry if the stream ever gets cut off. I'm recording this locally, so you'll have access to it. Anyway, let's get into today's topic of something that I've been mentioning for a while, something that others have been mentioning as well, and I think it merits to get right to the heart of the problem and explain sort of the personal affiliation I have, not just with the movement, but some of the folks involved with the movement. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. And before we do, this is just a little tidbit I like to make with some of my older videos that had slide footages, but anybody could use this however they want. I don't really give a crap, so go ahead. You'll never get a copyright strike from me, and just want to throw that out there as a disclosure. As for today's agenda, here it is. So I'll first be explaining to you what this so-called 3E strategy is. And just to give a little lead in, remember, even though this is a social cause, the fact of the matter is anytime there's people involved, there will always be the propensity and possibility for manipulation and control. And government actors like the FBI and the CIA deploy very similar tactics in their mission to infiltrate and control groups. It's not something that's unique to the Scientology movement, and it's something that very few movements, I would say, are even keen on understanding how they work, let alone seeing it how play out in their own movement. So I'll be explaining that because that will be very helpful in just laying foundational knowledge. I'll explain exactly what infiltration might look like, some misconceptions people might have. I'll explain the exact linkage that I have between Accenture and the infiltration that not only Accenture I've personally seen deploy, but how it's related to our movement in the SPTV community and the anti-Scientology protests. I'll go ahead and reread the letter allegedly put out by 86 GOP, and I'll share some of my thoughts on it. I already did during a live stream, but I'll redo it here just to keep it super condensed for people that want to see it all for themselves. I'll introduce to you a character that many might actually not be privy to. I know at the very least some of the protesters definitely have heard his name for the first time. and that'll be the case of Bob Minton. I won't go too much into it because frankly I find other people have already done a fantastic job of capturing just who he was and what he did. And then we'll go into a Q&A and we'll wrap it up. So the goal for this stream is ideally to be condensed and short to the point, and we'll open up for questions later, but I'll make more videos covering each of these aspects in more detail going forward. But without further ado, let's just get right into it. So first and foremost, right, just what is the 3E strategy? It's short for Embrace, Extend, Extinguish. It's a three-parter, and the original credit for coining the term actually goes to Microsoft for its monopoly practices, but the strategy in and of itself is actually not new. You can find many of the tactics here talked about by old philosophers, and commonly the most one you'll see, although it's not explicitly stating it, is The Art of War by Sun Tzu. You'll see shortly here just how these tactics are actually linked. And just to give a very brief background, back in the 90s and 2000s, and even continuing today, there was several heavy antitrust lawsuits lobbied against Microsoft for basically making their operating system inextricably linked to basic functionality and making it intentionally incompatible with other applications. So number one was the making of Internet Explorer being virtually impossible to delete, but not only that, making it impossible to install other web browsers onto the Microsoft the Windows operating system. That was a major case. Secondly, back in the early media player days, Microsoft intentionally bundled the Windows Media Player operating system and made it near impossible to install any other third-party media players, and there was a lot of battles going on with what they call digital rights management, DRM, essentially being embedded into both analog and digital, being embedded into digital media, essentially preventing you from potentially copying the media for reproduction. And it's strange because digital media, once you purchase it, what does it mean to purchase that media? Can you replicate it for yourselves in case the original item that came and stored the media breaks, right? We've all had that happen where USB sticks or hard drives fail, but your digital media is stored in that drive. Are you legally allowed to replicate that digital content into another drive so that you have access to it later, especially since you paid for it? These are the types of questions that were arising. And probably one of the more biggest concerns was a case where the Java programming language had come out and was heavily marketing itself as truly operating system independent, platform independent, and it's still to this day an open source language. But a deal Microsoft had was to build on top of that language, primarily to deploy still keeping to its true platform independent roots. The functionality Microsoft built, unfortunately, was not just that. It was directly tied to Microsoft operating system, its Windows operating system, that is. But it still continued to market the tools and features it sold as Java compatible. So that's sort of the background on the coining of the term. But the strategy itself is really not new whatsoever, as you'll see shortly. And it's basically a strategy widely used to exert control or potentially exterminate competition whenever a competitor comes around that basically poses a risk to your bottom line. Now, the goal sometimes is to continue allowing that competitor to exist, but in a much more diminished state. We see this oftentimes with digital product vendors that fundamentally still use a lot of the proprietary tools that a big name like Microsoft sells, but they might offer some niche functionality that isn't really fundamental to the basic core needs to solve your problem, but it has these bells and whistles that legally make it allow them to make the claim that, well, we're not technically all, you know, owned by Microsoft, but in reality they truly are. And we'll break down each of these 3 steps and how they relate to some of the basic knowledge that's issued in the Art of the War by Sun Tzu. So for step number 1, right, embrace. This step in particular, it relates to the adage of know your enemy and yourself in the Art of War. We'll see why in just a bit. Extend is particularly tied to use the indirect route to attack, and then the extinguish aspect can be very closely seen by divide and conquer in Sun Tzu's Art of War. So there's some history lessons for you. It all is interrelated, and we'll go on to the next slide explaining each of these 3 steps and how they relate not only to social movements, but how they are also seen in the tech space. So first off, embrace. In the tech space, the perspective that I've seen it, and many others have well, is basically you'll have a big name come in and basically pretend to care. They'll keep their enemies close, your friends close and your enemies closer type of approach, where they make saving face to show support of industry standards and technologies coming up, especially for indie communities. And they do this by usually offering to lend them financing, offering to lend them development support, and it makes it that much easier for people to basically drop their guard and welcome you into the group. This is happening really, really large right now, not just with consumer products. Folks that might have Apple products, you will find it very difficult to buy replacement parts, as an example, be it a battery or a broken screen, inevitably when these things do break. People like Louis Rossmann talk about this type of ability to repair the things you purchase from the consumer side, but on the industrial side, which I specifically work in, the same issue exists, and it's far worse. You have entire modules for power substations that you cannot easily swap and replace with another vendors because of various intentional locks placed into effect, making you forcibly buy just from this one vendor, both hardware and software products. So the ability to monitor the life of a electrical power plant, you will find oftentimes when one computer breaks that's doing all of the controlling, the computer itself has to be of this particular vendor name, and you cannot install just any type of software in that hardware. It's bizarre because when we take a look at personal devices, at least in the name of computers, we actually have this running in full completion, and this is called the Linux, oftentimes a Linux operating system that's widely used both by consumers and especially so in the industrial setting. The joke is that even companies like Microsoft have the majority of their business built entirely on Linux, and it's very fascinating when you see some of this pushback by techie people from these big names, when the reality is most of what they use is from tool sets like the Linux operating system. So I'll keep that one as short as that. There's a lot more to go into there, but again, this is essentially keep your friends close and your enemies closer. The best way really to take over a movement and to cause mayhem and chaos is by working on the inside. So it's a very, very common tactic, and in the tech world you'll see it often in the case of buying out or acquiring a company but keeping the name brand still. So just keep your eye out on that. It's a very, very common tactic. Going on to extend. So in the tech world, right, after you gain a foothold and you essentially build some trust with the community, you do this by building on what was already created using proprietary means. So for example, you might build in some sort of visual tool that looks visual aspect of the tool that looks potentially prettier to the end user, but the core technology is still this open and public technology. And in the background, while you're building out these enhancements, you do not make these enhancements public. You in fact build all of them and keep all of that technology proprietary, and you actively work to patent all of it, so that eventually when the end users and even the original group that made the technology wants to potentially either build it out for themselves or enhance upon it, they have to go through you via mediation or potentially paying out royalties and other really convoluted licensing that just makes it that much harder to use the product as it currently is without having some sort of proprietary big tech company owned assets bleed into it. So for the Art of War part from Sun Tzu, this is again the indirect route to attack. You're basically making your enemy reliant upon you through various means. That could be financially, where you're providing, right, in the case of people like Microsoft and Accenture, you're providing finances. You're also serving as a confidant for people. You offer that as a resource. You also offer to serve as a strategic consultant. You know, what's the cause or what's the community going to do next? These are the types of things that you will often see from this stage of the strategy. The interesting thing, though, the one caveat to this strategy, especially for the extend portion, is typically the folks that are using these manipulation tactics never quite put themselves on the front lines, which is usually a typical giveaway. Oftentimes you might hear either by their own language or just the pattern of behavior without them explicitly saying it. They'll make a lot of patterns of behavior that clearly show they have a higher willingness to put themselves out there in the public eye, but they don't necessarily do that, and they don't necessarily take on the front reins. This is a very interesting caveat to notice, because you would imagine, right, if you're that serious about making the change and you truly care that much, you know, there's obviously a function and role for everybody, but the more you're out there in the public eye, like for the case that we've seen in our once beloved 86 GOP, where the use of super chats was very common, and the fact that they went to dinner, right, to essentially reveal their identity. These are things that clearly indicate there is a desire to be in a more publicly facing figure, but they never quite do it. But they leave all these breadcrumbs that clearly show from their behavior that this is their intention, but never quite do. It's a very clear, a big giveaway, and you'll see why in another example in a bit. But basically, this is what the extend portion of the strategy involves. Now we'll move on to the final phase, also known as extinguish. So from the text side, basically what happens is the technology itself, again, still being primarily public open, but all these add-ons and enhancements that are added to it, essentially people find them essential. So it might be more added functionality like really cool notifications or alarms. And what that does is, because it's now got this feature set built in a proprietary manner, you're locked in to that one vendor, and it makes it virtually impossible to purchase a competitor that offers a like-for-like functionality, but also it makes it virtually impossible to completely ditch the old product altogether, the old services altogether, and just switch over to something else. It serves to essentially undermine and diminish your competition and make people more dependent directly on you. And in the art of war, this is essentially the divide and conquer scheme, where the division doesn't have to happen overtly, it can happen covertly. And the goal is, over time, you make people forget what they were originally fighting for. You make good actors essentially be a primary target of people to doubt their intentions, and you simultaneously also downplay any impact that bad actors would have had. And all of these all of these are going on simultaneously. It's not like one of these has a bigger or more important impact than any other. All of this occurs at once, simultaneously, all the time, and it's constantly going on and on and on and on and on. And over time, it will lead to the desired outcome of either running a controlled opposition, where you are essentially owning your competition and you allow them to operate just as a brand name only, as their original, but behind the scenes you have full control of it, or you seek to completely exterminate them and just get them out of the game. The ideal for many infiltrators is actually the first, where they're running controlled opposition, right, where they're serving as a confidant, a strategic consultant for you, so that you have the ability to maneuver the movement and individuals within a movement exactly how you wish to have them go. And in the case of what we witness here, that's exactly what the that's exactly the direction we saw the once beloved character steering the movement towards. So to summarize again, you have the 3 steps: embrace, extend, extinguish. The end goal really is control and domination. Ideally, you control your competitor from the inside and run controlled opposition. But if it comes down to it, the end state is always removing the competitor altogether. So it's a very common tactic. It's been used for quite a while. It's not unique to technology, and it's still widely used to this day. So moving on now, what exactly does infiltration look like? And don't worry if you can't quite see it on your screen. Again, I'll have all this available, but basically the definition of infiltration, right, is anything that's covert or overt to integrate into a community with the intent of influencing them, gathering information, and disrupting operations from within. It's a lot easier to take down something that is a direct risk to your bad operations if you do it from the inside. And really, the only remedy for infiltration is a proactive review of the actions and patterns of behavior committed by all individuals within a given community, but specifically to do so in a public manner. Privately engaging in outing bad actors and outing signs of infiltration, that only serves to keep the infiltration at a minimum, to downplay it and to make it seem like it's not happening. And so it needs to happen in a public manner. It will not be pretty. It's intentionally not supposed to be pretty. Conflict, just by its nature, is not inherently bad. It is important, though, in the case of infiltration type of conflict, that you air it out publicly, because it allows everybody else to audit information for themselves, to verify its authenticity. And ideally, right, you do it in a live manner so that people can see receipts without said receipts being altered. The biggest takeaway from doing infiltration outing publicly is one of the best ways to do it is you encourage the asking of questions about topics that might have already been something others assume everybody knew, but the reality is few, if any, actually knew. And so issues like what a foundation does and how it does it is not a inherently bad question. Some people very well know, others might have no idea. Some people might be serving on the boards, some might not. It's not bad to just simply ask the question, as long as the manner right is done in a way to ask the question rather than you're already coming to a conclusion before ever asking the question. But asking questions and doing so in a public manner is a very healthy way of outing infiltration and bad actors. And the thing to keep in mind with infiltration is that it's a process. It never happens overnight. Everyone's vulnerable to it, and it's a culmination, the end state that you see with bad actors in the end with the actual bad incident. That is just the peak. There is a giant series of steps leading up to that peak. It's never just, here's this major one-off incident, done. It never works like that and never will. And the most interesting thing is that groups and communities and businesses and causes all fail fundamentally because they do not proactively and publicly talk about infiltration, and it only serves to everybody's detriment. And more importantly, every movement is also related to many other movements. In this case, right, we have a direct link clearly for a cult to the technology sector. The story I personally went through and the character that we're going to talk about today, that's not unique. This is one of many other stories of this cult being involved in a topic that seemingly might not be linked, but it is. It is very deeply linked, and it's important, even if you don't have each of the details and how it's linked, it's important simply to know that this movement is fundamentally tied to many other movements and many other topics and causes, right? It's not exclusively just Scientology. It's not exclusively just the child abuse. You know, it's important to look at how, for example, that child abuse is enacted and enabled, right? And we have linkages for Scientology to the technology sector, and my hope is to bring yet again one of countless other stories to show how all of these pieces converge together. So it's important to have that whole picture, and that's really the biggest takeaway I wanted people to get out of this. There's no physical singular way that it looks like. It's really a process over time, and the end goal is essentially to disrupt operations from within. It's always easier to thwart something from within. I'll dive into next the story I have about specifically Accenture, which is tied to a once beloved character. I'll share two stories that I very recently went through, and we'll see very clearly how this one company has a very checkered history and a consistent past of doing this kind of controlled opposition, and it's again not their first time, right? Scientology is just one of many other assets in their portfolio. You'll find that a lot of these businesses love the language of finance, especially companies like Accenture and companies like Booz Allen, who even if you take a look at their public website, they talk about being a critical asset, providing support for business assets. It's always in the eyes of assets. How is this community, this individual going to be an asset, both economically, both politically, socially, to any sort of interests and intentions they might have, right? And that goes to speak to the 3 E's that we just covered. You know, you can let a competitor exist as long as you allow them to exist in a very specific way that isn't fundamentally breaking your bottom line. So my own personal story with Accenture really started 3 years ago, and it's not the only story. And if you want a full like step-by-step detail of how and the who and the what and the where and the why, there's a couple of resources I can refer you to. I wrote an article. It's stupidly long, but again, if you want it, you can take a look and read it. I made some couple of YouTube shorts to explain it for both of the companies I worked at. And basically, at the end of the day, it just comes down to utilizing the 3 E's to gain control over a business to enact your bidding and will. So the first case I specifically with Accenture, I worked at Kodak. There was a new line of business being alleged by Kodak that they were looking to sell pharmaceutical precursor chemistry, which is basically the main ingredients that go into making your end pharmaceutical drug. Kodak wanted to get into this business. It is a very difficult thing to do, and they fell to Accenture, who was without any sort of deliberation was purchased as the go-to channel provider, which is essentially a fancy way of saying their main consultant in this journey of making a new pharma business. And they were exclusively listening to Accenture for all things technology related. So all of their software and hardware technology needs. Kodak eventually basically said, we're going to shut our brains off. We're going to just take all of that work of what to buy, where to buy, and how much to buy. We're just going to listen to Accenture and pull the plug. And just that's what they say goes. That's it. This is a terrible way to go about not only a business, but for financial reasons, but for safety reasons, especially when you talk about manufacturing. Anybody that's worked in manufacturing knows that the biggest concern is usually safety. And when it comes to proprietary technology, if you cannot audit the technology within, you really have no way of definitively saying, we know for a absolute fact that yes, this is not selling information to China. We know for a fact that yes, this is not stealing our financial data and releasing it to bad actors. You have no objective way of stating that as fact if it in fact is not a public technology. The vendor that Accenture was heavily lobbying Kodak to go for was SAP. SAP is basically one of the most hated companies out there, and they are also very old. They have roots in another place I used to work at called IBM. And I'll leave this as a summary because there's so much to go into there. But SAP is basically, at its face, just a simple accounting firm. They sell finance-related software, but it's not just finance-related software. They are in it deep with a bunch of other basically political infiltration initiatives to make both companies, both big and small, buy just their products and services, full stop. And that's essentially what happened at Kodak. Accenture came on board. There was tens of millions of dollars hemorrhaged into buying hardware and software for completely unnecessary reasons, all without first taking into account what this production line would look like, how many people would be potentially staffing it, and they never went and did any sort of what's called factory acceptance testing prior to purchasing. This is factory acceptance testing is basically you go to a vendor, you have a demonstration of how it looks like in a mock production line, and once you feel comfortable enough with it, you pull a trigger and you say, yep, I want that software, I want this many licenses, and I want this type of support. The way it happened is Jim Continenza, he still to this day serves as CEO of two companies, a major conflict of interest, one of which being Kodak, another being this joke of a social media marketing company called Vivial. Continenza hired a fellow crony called Jim Barnes, and what Jim Barnes' role was to with an iron fist, shill all of the products and services that Accenture is feeding into the ears of the executives at Kodak. And so 3 years later, there's still no real pharma business. Millions of dollars have gone down the toilet for purchasing technology, software, hardware, and business consulting services that were completely unnecessary and unused. And what should have been the creation of several hundreds of jobs as a result of this initiative is now just yet another successful initiative for Accenture to line their own pockets and destroy the bottom line of Kodak and destroy any opportunities that locals might have had at getting a job at Kodak. So that's the Kodak story and how Accenture ties into it. I saw Good SP. Yeah, SAP is trash. Anybody that's ever used it, it's dog water, dog diarrhea. So don't take my word for it. There's a whole army of people out there that will tell you the same thing. Moving on to how this exact story played out in a different company I worked at. It was a local lithium battery recycler called Li-Cycle. And the funniest thing about Li-Cycle is, just like in their name, this fucking place lies all the time. So the story here was, instead of Accenture, which is one of many big tech consulting companies, there's another big tech consulting company called Gartner. And Gartner was buzzing in the ears of Li-Cycle executives. And Gartner had made a lot of recommendations, which again are not really recommendations now that you've seen how Accenture plays. Gartner made a recommendation to buy all sorts of technology services and products, both hardware and software, so business systems as well as manufacturing systems that Li-Cycle absolutely did not need at the time, still does not need at this time, and were complete overkill for the relative simplicity that a newcomer and startup like Li-Cycle actually needed at the time. The biggest issues there was Li-Cycle hired a family friend by the name of Chris Bassan of a very small business called Bassan Innovations to do all of their factory work for their control systems and their software and every recommendation to buy for all their factories globally. That's a big problem. You never see that even with big companies where they exclusively choose just one provider. And the work that this company did was absolutely shoddy. And ultimately Li-Cycle ended up defrauding investors of tens of millions by lying about their production numbers. Their number one product that they sell is something called black mass, which is a material you extract after you crunch down batteries and get back this magic powder that you can then basically recatalyze to make it fit for being used in battery production again. They lied about how much they were actually able to recycle, and they also lied about how much they were projected to be able to recycle. What this led is to a series of class action suits. The story I wrote up on Li-Cycle eventually was taken and used by a mainstream reporter to report on a lot of the fraudulent activities of Li-Cycle. And again, the link is that Li-Cycle used a similar big company like Accenture, that they shut their brain off, just listened to what this company told them to do, in this case Gartner. They hemorrhaged tens of millions. They lost most of their investors' money, and they're still to this day lying about how productive and innovative of a company they are. And all this to say, we have two separate instances of infiltration by a company that seemingly only deals in technology, but clearly that's not the case. They have strong political ideologies and agendas to shill services just by one vendor, and the end outcome is that we have companies A major one being a Fortune 500 company under the infiltration of Accenture. And then in the case of Lifecycle, we have a relative upcomer that's still publicly listed on the NASDAQ, completely infiltrated by Gartner. So when it comes to how does infiltration look like, it's not just the Scientology movement that you can take a look at infiltration using the 3E strategy. It happened at these two different places, completely unrelated to one another, and it happens everywhere. The 3E strategy is very, very common, and I just wanted to give you these two places just to show you again, infiltration doesn't really have a specific way other than just a method of gaining influence, and all in the name of domination and control. Some of the other ways I've seen it also look like with infiltration is social movements. I've been part of a bunch of different environmental groups that when you took a look at the makeup of their group, it was predominantly people that worked at oil and gas, and the movement itself was being primarily funded by oil and gas. So that's a big red flag. Another big way I've seen it is these fake accountability boards for police, especially here in Rochester. Police accountability boards are just trash, and they're usually made up of ex or current cops, as well as cop lawyers that are predominantly used by the labor union, the police labor union. And it's astounding to me. It's like, what kind of accountability and change in action do you expect when the majority of your money and your staffers are literally ex or current cops, right? Ex or current oil and gas staffers that don't believe in a greener or more environmentally friendly future, and just harp on these sort of techie ways of, well, if you apply, more software licenses and just make your visual look this much better, that's going to ultimately fix the environment, bro. These are the types of interactions that ultimately degrade the quality of the cause, degrade the quality of the movement. And so yet again, we have other examples to compare how this infiltration and bad acting looks like. All right. Let's go to the reading of the 86 GOP letter. And really what I wanted to get out of this one is I wanted to show you, let me see if I can move it more over here. I wanted to show you just line by line how some of this is just absolute dog water, right? And so we'll just go off and read it line by line. You guys can feel free to listen on, and we'll take it from there. So, to all concerned, well, actually, let me take a step back. So, this statement was seen on Rib Guy's community post. So it's on Rib Guy's channel. Allegedly 86 GOP on his own YouTube channel that he utilized to provide financing to streamers for. Allegedly he was unable to make a community post, which I find very weird, because even if you can't, you can still post a static YouTube video that you can do something like an AI voice to read you this letter, and you can post it on your description field. So already we're at a bad start, right? We're already at the point where we're using another person to do your bidding. A literal textbook definition of fucking showing how infiltration and manipulation and control fucking works. We are literally witnessing it before we even fucking read the article. Again, there's countless ways that the real 86 himself could have gone and posted this piece of content publicly, and he fucking didn't, right? He chose to have somebody else do his bidding, just like he chose to show up at the fucking encampment in a anonymous mask to hand out $100 bills that, for anybody could fucking know, could have been fucking fraudulent, and gotten people in trouble when it came time to cash out that $100 bill. So we're already at a really bad fucking start before we even get fucking started. So everybody should know that, again, there's been a shitload of other avenues this guy could have fucking taken to make this statement public. He chose none of them, and instead he chose to do it in this very overly dramatic and highly intentional way. So we'll go ahead and read the statement Rib Guy made, and then we'll read the rest of the letter. So here we go. The following statement has been written by 86 GOP. He asked for me to post the statement since he cannot post it on the 86 GOP page due to lack of content. I did not assist in the crafting of the statement, and I do not endorse or share any of the opinions made by 86 GOP. 86 GOP's final statement or swan song. God, I can't fucking... This guy is just a fucking douchebag already, man. So fucking dramatic, but... Alright, whatever. To all concerned, and even those not concerned at all, this will be my final communication in the protesting community. I have enjoyed the verve, at times, and many of the passionate people involved with the anti-Scientology cause. Unfortunately, at this time, I am left with despair about the direction and tenability of the protesters' movement. This. You fucking see this, 86? Hold on, I'm gonna keep it right there for a fucking bit. Hold on, right there. My fucking God. I initially was attracted to the cause about 5 years ago because I had lost friends who committed suicide after leaving cults. I have also assisted with a failed family intervention to remove a person from Scientology. My protesting days are behind me, but I felt that I could be effective with my financial resources. I knew that people were quitting jobs or reducing work hours in order to participate in this movement. So I wanted to reward them for their work and dedication to the cause. Simply put, the protesters who did the most relevant work received the largest donations. I am active in over 20 philanthropies and anonymously gift without any conditions. And anonymous gifts without any conditions have never been an issue. So we're already at a bad start here, right? This is already a very, very rough start. Very rough start. So let's break it down, right? Let's break it down. First of all, as somebody who is involved in many philanthropies, while I can respect that, right? While I can certainly respect that, you of all people should be well aware of what it means to be a donor and not have a voice. That's the whole point of being a donor. If you are a donor, your voice is essentially, here's money, I believe in your cause, I am going to fucking move away and let you handle it. That's the literal textbook definition of being a philanthropic donor. When you are anything but that, you own the criticism that you rightfully get, because that is the fucking opposite of what it means to be a philanthropic donor. So, already, go fuck yourself. Let's keep going. Let's now address the conflict of interest issue. Ask yourself this question: how is there a conflict when an individual provides donations without any condition or quid pro quo in order to financially reward hard work? This was just explained by the entire monologue I went off on the 3E framework, the strategy of embrace, extend, extinguish, right? Just because you explicitly did not state, I want you to do X for Y amount of money, that's not the only way. First of all, you can establish quid pro quo. Because if it was, that would just be fucking stupid, and literally countless of racketeering cases would never have fucking come to fruition. That's just that's just wrong. That's just objectively factually wrong, regardless of what you think of me, regardless of what you think of the community. That is just pure wrong. That is fucking wrong. That is objectively wrong. Okay, so you can absolutely have influence with donations. The moment you are trying to tell or sway what to do in what way, that is literally how you can fucking sway a movement and influence them and assert the implication of quid pro quo. So literally fucking wrong off the bat. All right, all of my gifts to protesters were unconditional. Again, not true. We just went over this because you clearly stated, if you don't do this, then I'm not gonna donate in the cause. That, again, you know, by exerting influence and not getting your will, that is literally the definition of I'm giving you money to enact an action. That's literally fucking quid pro quo. So, bro, you don't have to explicitly say it, right? You don't have to explicitly say it when you first give money. That's just not how it works. So it's by behaviors that you see intentions. You don't have to explicitly sit there and say, hello, person A, I'm going to give you $5, and for that $5 I want you to do Z. That's not how that works, man. And I'm frankly disappointed for somebody that has your level of knowledge, experience, and background. You of all people should fucking know that, right? It's establishing a pattern of fucking behavior, and off the bat you already failed that fucking condition right there. So let's keep going. It is also true that I had given Mindy my cash to protesters on the front line, anonymously and unconditionally. This was specifically due to the long hours and fatigue that had set in at the site of the occupation. As an experienced business person, I have always used cash to reward my employees or supporters for their commitment to a cause, project, or client. This is called a bonus in the real world. Alright, listen, fucking asshole. Alright, listen. As a business person, as a tech person, you of all people should fucking know that actually the easiest way to transfer money to somebody is you can fucking you could fucking electronically transfer it to them. And there are countless ways for them to electronically withdraw it without penalties. Financial platforms do this, and they do this very fucking well, alright? It is not like they don't. This is not something that's new, right? It's not something that's fucking new. This has been around for a while. And in fact, I'm shocked that you of all people would say this. You literally know that you can transfer money faster using electronic methods than physical ones. And usually the reason why most people want to do it in cash is to remove any ties. So all I'm really hearing from one tech person to another is that you wanted to somehow remove yourself from any potential wrongdoings by providing cash. This is the only conclusion anybody could fucking come to, because you are smart enough to know that there are payment methods out there electronically to get money into people's hands en masse and quickly. So that's just blatantly false, right? That's just blatantly false. I know you know that, and you just lied. That's just an outright lie, right? And by the way, bonuses don't just come as cash on hand, right? I've gotten bonuses, and they're never exclusively been as cash on hand. Sometimes they are. Other times they can come in the form of stocks, right? They could fucking come in the form of stocks. That's another fucking way. You very well could have fucking gifted somebody, here's 500 stock units of Apple. You could have fucking done that if you really wanted to. You didn't, but you know you could have, right? That's an option. They also would have the option to exercise those stock units as a trade, right? And take away money. That's another fucking option. You're lying. And I'm sad to see that you continue to shill this lie to people that this is a only way of doing things. You know that's wrong. You know it's wrong. And again, if you really wanted to have a major infuse of funds, you know many better ways to do it. Could have bought more tents. Could have bought more food. Could have done a lot of things. Frankly, you could have fucking pulled a Bob Minton and showed up in person, and you didn't, right? You could have fucking been the person to hand it out yourself. You already had availed yourself, and to do this tactic of showing up physically in person, even though you had a mask on, you know what you were doing, right? Why did you designate Mindy when you could have simply regaled yourself to others and given them the availed yourself to others and given them the cash? I mean, you're already there in person. I just don't understand. So you're just continuing down this path of lying. That's forget everything else. It's just, this is all about you, right? All of these statements you're making, all this behavior, it's all about you. Let's keep going. I will admit that I was manipulated by an agent of change who instead became Agent Orange with a mission to torch everything in his wake. So, I do have some remaining side work to complete before closing this rather unfortunate chapter in my life. Let us deal with the known charlatan via the law. Please do not threaten this transient with any bodily injury, as we need the court system to be solvent in this case. I refuse to let this bad actor destroy innocent people's lives and then sail into the sunset. That is not going to happen on my watch. Again, we have another contradiction here. We have a statement of do not threaten this person, yet here you are threatening severe legal punishment, right? Legal punishment. Now, you know you're doing something wrong here because in your little twist of words, you write it as do not inflict any bodily injury. You know very well that people will come after him if in any way possible, and to save your own ass, right, you explicitly write this clause as if somehow that admonishes you when it does not, but you have this clause of any bodily injury. Don't threaten him with any bodily injury. Any other kind of threats, go for it, but bodily injury, let's not go there, right? Bodily injury, let's not go there. Let's just keep it to all other kinds of injury, but bodily injury, let's not go there. And oh, by the way, I'm gonna fucking sue them into non-existence, right? Right, don't threaten them, but also, I'm gonna fucking threaten you, so go fuck yourself. Make that one make fucking sense. Let's keep going here. On a final note, you might hear that I am paying for Danny's TRO defense. This is correct. Danny has been a loyal soldier for the cause and does now require legal assistance. I have asked for nothing from Danny other than what he continues to assist in his own defense. Best of luck to everybody currently in the movement. I'm glad you're paying for Danny's TRO defense. I truly am. There's nothing to squander on that part. It's interesting the language that you use in this statement, though, where you call him a soldier of the cause. It's very clear that 86 has this entire movie in his head about how this battle is playing out, and everybody is a soldier and a pawn in the play that 86 already has elaborately put together in his own psyche. Everybody is simply a soldier or a pawn for 86 to simply maneuver around the chessboard as he wishes. That is a very intentional word. He simply could have stated Danny has been loyal for the cause. It was not done so. He explicitly stated he would, he is a soldier, loyal soldier, right? There's a very clear intentioned word placed there, and it's fascinating to see it play out, and yet simultaneously you are refusing to acknowledge the very same words that you're putting forth, 86. You could have been a Bob Minton, 86, and we'll get to that in just a moment, but your use of very clearly intentioned words, your pattern of behavior, show that you have this strong desire to control. Because I've met people who are philanthropists and truly don't want anything of their identity revealed. They just simply want to give the money and get the fuck out. And that's all they want to do. They believe in the philanthropy. They've done their research. They've audited the shit out of them. And all they do afterwards is just get the fuck out. That's all they do, and they never want to be seen or heard from again. And you know what I can tell you? They exhibit none of these patterns of behavior that you're exhibiting. This clear need to insert yourself in a public fashion, they do not do. This clear desire for control, they do not exhibit. This clear mincing of words and wanting to enact punishment onto those that do not listen to you, they do not exhibit. These are very intentional words and statements and patterns of behavior, and it's very clear based off of your pattern of behavior that we can deduce intentions, right? We don't need you to explicitly state, for $5 I want you to do behavior Z. That's just not something that you need for a quid pro quo to exist. And I know you know that. It doesn't work like that. And this is just common 3E strategy of embrace, extend, extinguish. That's what that is. And I know you know that. And I know you've seen it, and you've likely been part of those movements that have enacted exactly this type of infiltration tactic. I know you've been there, and I'm just fucking disappointed. I'm really fucking disappointed. All right. Moving on from the letter, let's go into the history of Bob Minton. And again, I'll keep this relatively short because I know many, especially since, you know, we're the next generation in the millennial age. Well, we'll talk about really why 86 GOP wishes he was Bob Minton, and really why Bob Minton still to this day serves as a great example for what a true financier that supports a movement looks like, and does not wish to have anything to do with controlling the outcome of the movement. So let's dive right in. Bob Minton, first and foremost, if you want really detailed information into his history, go and take a look at Mark Bunker's YouTube channel. The dude has buttloads and buttloads and boatloads and buttloads of videos explaining Bob Minton's involvement, and there's tons of other articles publicly. I know many people don't know of Bob Minton, but I would start off there first. Secondly, as far as addressing who Bob Minton is, he was really a completely unknown figure. Came out of left field, worked as a banker, and his main gripe with Scientology was that At the time, there was countless lawsuits being levied by Scientology against people who had any sort of Scientology content in their household. So, be it Dianetics books, pamphlets, flyers, OT papers, in the name of not having those materials with the express permission of the cult. That was the big number one issue that Bob Minton took with Scientology. He did not appreciate the fact that in the digital age, they ever had the say to number one, control what people could and could not have access to as information, but number two, personally own for private use. And literally, Scientology was suing people under copyright infringement for owning this material without their express permission. Bob Minton showed up in person to protests. Bob Minton was a pivotal financier. He led to the church losing tens of millions of dollars. He was essentially public enemy number one for a very long time. But the beautiful thing with Bob was that he was front and center. He showed up to protests. He donated lots of money, and he did not sway which way the protesters went. That is a good example of who people that wish to be a financier and claim themselves to be a major philanthropist. That's a very good example of how to do it. So, really personally, I'm sincerely disappointed that for somebody like 86 to not be to not step up to the role that Bob Minton had, that he left as an example for others. I'm truly disappointed because he had the option and he chose not to. And I'll leave it at that. The other thing I'll say is when it comes to financiers and money, obviously movements and causes need money. Charities and philanthropic organizations need money. Everything needs money to work. There's a difference between levying the money for your own control and tactics and your own interest versus being a true philanthropist and leaving your money with the cause that you donated. And that is what Bob Minton did. He suffered greatly for it, but he still did it. Even when he was going through it, he still contributed. He still stepped up to the plate. And even when Scientology had him on the reins, he still stepped up to the plate. And it's not like we don't have a shining example of what to do in cases of, again, people who are big financiers. We do. And it's disappointing to see that this individual known as 86 GOP did not do that. So again, the money that people receive, that's fucking great. I'm not gonna sit here and complain about that. That's fucking great. Money is needed, period. I'm glad that a lawyer's defense is being paid for. That's fucking important and necessary. Period. Like, there's nothing to complain about that. That is a legitimate action, and leave it at that, right? You don't need to do any other meddling. You just simply pay for the attorney's fees, and you leave it at that. You have no further say in what that person may or may not do, and you don't try to influence and persuade them into any action or the other than just leaving it at that. You finance, and you move away. That's how a real philanthropist works. And for somebody that operated as a philanthropist for several dozen charities, again, I'm really disappointed. You know, I know you know better, and you know I know you know better. All right, so that's all the material I had. Let's see what questions people might have. Alright, there's a crap load in chat. I'll do my best. Somebody said, you don't want my money anymore, I'll sue you. Silliness. Yes, it is silliness. We all don't like a rich guy getting a bigger say than we do, but still don't see any conspiracy here. No proof in this stream. There is proof, not only in this stream, but literally when I was there at the encampment, I saw it go down live, right? I saw it. I'm not sure how that could not be any further proof. There's a clear threat also made right here of suing somebody into non-existence. That's proof. You're clearly a troll. That's just silliness. Like, forget what you may or may not think about me. It doesn't really matter, but that is proof. I'm not really sure how you could make such a stupid statement. That is proof. Right? That is proof. How are you not taking that as proof? I don't understand how you can possibly sit there and say this is not proof. That is absolute proof. Literally, it's proof. It's fucking proof. Aaron might try to cancel me, Henry, for calling out 86. ASL tried protecting 86 during the DOA. I think that was primarily for because of the fact that he was not caught up to what had taken place. And frankly, again, if he donated 50 G's, fucking great. I have no problem with that. Just keep it at just that, right? He's a philanthropist. Keep it at 50 G's. Move on, right? That's how a real philanthropist works. I know. I've seen them. I've worked with them. I know the ones that really are about true philanthropy very well. Leave it at the 50 G's. And don't try to influence in any way, shape, or form, right? You don't want to talk about philanthropy, that's philanthropy. Donate 50 G's, get the fuck out. Donate 50 G's, again, if he does, get the fuck out. That's philanthropy. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure, yeah, like I want him to have the charitable donation, right? That's stupid. I absolutely want Aaron to have the money, even if it's coming from a guy that was a fucking asshole, because it doesn't really fucking matter at the end of the day whether the guy was an asshole or not. That's a good thing. You're supporting a helpful cause, and if they're truly doing good work, then they would go and make good use of that money. So just like with Danny, he's getting money for a TRO. That's a very good thing because it's fucking expensive. I want that for Danny, and he has been helpful. It's not I don't understand, you know. That's a good thing. Doesn't really matter what I think on, you know, whether the SPTV Foundation received money from 86 or not. Really, it's the behavior of the philanthropist that I would question first and foremost, then of course of the foundation, but the behavior of the philanthropist is what I would question. I'm not going to sit here and say that they shouldn't take that money. Let them have the fucking money. They all know they need it. I know, we all know Danny needs it. That's a good thing. I have no problem with them getting help for things they need. Alright. Let's see. Any other questions? Barry, have you ever considered the possibility that your own personal views and experiences in the world taint your own subjective conclusions? Yeah, I mean, literally, I offered to 86 to show up in person, right? He already did that once. Do it again. Show up with a mask. Or contact... Like, there's so many ways to make contact. I haven't gotten any of that. And again, if he had the audacity to show up in person physically, and he has not done so, but he continues to make himself publicly known in other avenues, then clearly he has an interest in being a public figure. Like, I don't understand. That's... He has the option. I don't even understand what you mean by that. I have literally fucking extended the invite. I was literally there. Live in person. I extended the fucking invite to talk to him. I even sent a fucking LinkedIn invite. Alright? I fucking sent him a LinkedIn invite. And I still have yet to hear back. So... That's stupid, right? That's just stupid. And yeah, that's just stupid. Somebody said, I need some receipts for these philanthropies you claimed to worked with. I didn't donate to them. I didn't donate them. I'm talking about, I know people that are leads of philanthropies. A big one here in Rochester, in particular. And, yeah. I personally am not a philanthropist. Maybe in the future, when I have more liquid assets, I could, but I sure shit can't now. I've never claimed to have been a philanthropist. And for working with charity organizations and philanthropies, it's primarily been to do like watchdog type of work. I have never been an actual philanthropist myself, so yeah, I would never make that claim. But just because you have not been a philanthropist, right, doesn't mean that you don't get to make a say in what's a positive way for a philanthropist to behave or not. That's just, again, that would be very stupid. You personally, individually, physically do not have to be present somewhere to know that something is true. If that was the case, then none of us would be here and enjoy all the modern amenities of modern day life. That's just yet again another really fucking stupid statement. So I think I can see where you're coming from, but again, you don't have to physically, explicitly, individually, personally work for some place to understand what makes it a necessary good or bad actor, or what it understand to what it means for a positive example of that group existing. So that's just stupid. Oh, she meant to see, she needed to see 86 GOP's receipts of philanthropy, not yours. Even if I would still say, even if that's the case, it's still not all that relevant. They made a statement, right? They made a statement for their age and for the type of work they were involved with. I could see it. I'm not saying I believe them, but what I'm going off of is the assumption that, let's say if it is true, and this is how they're behaving at another alleged philanthropic cause. It's a very bad taste for somebody to show up in this fashion as a philanthropist. And just taking them for their own word, right? We know that's just not how a good look for a philanthropist looks like. We have countless examples that you don't need to personally live through. We're just taking, let's just say, right, under this simple assumption for now, taking this person at their word. It's yet again another pattern of behavior to show that they're operating in a very intentional and malicious way. They know they are. They're very fully aware of it, and they don't care. They just don't care. Like, they just don't care. You know, that's the whole point. They just don't care. So he doesn't care. You know, he just doesn't care. Just doesn't care. So yeah. Let's see if I got another one. If not, we'll end it here. Yeah, alright. All the other stuff was pretty straightforward. So I'll end it there. Keep an eye out, post the slide deck soon, and yep, thanks for joining. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace, take care, and alright, see ya.